If you're thinking about becoming a physical therapist or are interested in working for Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland, this is the podcast for you. I'm joined today by Russ Patty and Matt Masankai, both of whom are doctors of physical therapy, and Russ is also the director of the Columbia OACM Center. Welcome to A Bone to Fix from Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland Division. I'm Scott Webb, and I've got a bone to fix with you. So I want to thank you both for joining me today. We're going to talk through a bunch of stuff, right, about how to become a PT, how do you build your confidence, navigating the job market, fitting in at OACM, and all sorts of good stuff. But Matt, I want to start with you and just give us a sense, like your introduction to the OACM Therapy Team. Like, what was that like when you walked through the door?
I will say walking in there was a little bit intimidating, knowing that I'll be the youngest therapist and the new grad.
Hmm.
The next youngest therapist is someone who's 4, pushing 5 years in. So the phenomenon, the imposter syndrome definitely kicked in because I feel like I was another student walking in, but I had to remind myself that I am a therapist, that, Russ brought me onto the team to be a treating therapist.
Yeah.
And reminding myself that this is a good opportunity to be in because I can pick brains of other therapists who've been long in the game and sticking around and learning from that sense. So that's why I chose this location. Was the biggest thing, knowing that I am fresh out of school. There's a lot for me to learn, and why not learn from therapists who've been in it longer than I have?
Yeah, and I'm sure mentorship and teamwork is a big part of it, part of the culture there at OACM, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of therapists have pulled me to the side and said that it's okay for me to not know everything.
Hmm.
What they told me, and it's true, is that when you're learning in PT school, they teach you how to pass the boards. It's only that the year in your clinicals, that's when you actually learn how to be a treating clinician. And as a first year, I didn't have a lot of experience, obviously, with being a treating clinician. So it's obvious for me to not know everything. And they allowed this environment for me to just ask as many questions as I can. Russ had the opportunity to block off my schedule to meet up once a week to talk about case studies and how to manage patients, and then give me an opportunity to spend time with other therapists who have different experiences and different facets, whether it's a different body part or their experience in certain case studies, all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
that's great. Yeah, and you're talking about Russ, and Russ is here. So, Russ, let's bring you in and let's talk about the journey from graduation to practicing. I know you've been at it a little bit longer, obviously, than Matt, but just give us a sense. Take us through maybe the significance of clinical rotations and internships and all of that. Like, how do we get from graduation to practicing and working with patients or clients?
So, my name is Russ Patty. I graduated from the University of St. Augustine 8 years ago and took my first job here with OACM. And our mentorship and our new grad program has developed vastly along the way. Not that it was not there before, but we refine things as years go on. So, as Matt joined the team here, he's surrounded by a lot of seasoned clinicians that really were able to help form his skills, refine his skills, make him feel a little bit more confident. At OACM, we've developed a specific mentorship program where, as Matt was alluding to, we block your schedule and we make sure you spend enough one-on-one time with each patient. Then you get a little bit of time afterwards to make sure you're doing your documentation correctly, make sure you're really thinking about your diagnosis, make sure that you're developing the right plan of care, because ultimately somebody's healthcare is in your hands. So it
Yeah.
can be a daunting task as a new graduate, and it's kind of the initial leap, the initial jump in that is always difficult.
Hmm.
But just like anything else, as you get used to it, it becomes second nature and you're able to roll with it. But I think, what's really important here, the sense of teamwork and culture at our locations, at all 8 locations in OACM, have really helped foster a great environment for a new graduate. And, those are the types of things you want to look for when you're coming out of school.
Right. Yeah, and Matt, Russ used the word daunting there. The daunting nature of what you do and walking into this situation and working with people and developing plans and all of that stuff that you have to do. I don't have to tell you what you have to do. You already know. But how do you build the confidence? Like, where does that confidence come from?
I think a lot of it, I'm a spiritual guy, so asking God is like, God, help me through this eval. Like saying a small prayer is like, okay, I know what I'm doing, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm doing. Please give me at least the confidence for me to portray what I know and, the little experience I have to this patient. That first week, it was definitely daunting, but the biggest thing is repetition, repetition, repetition. So the amount of reps I got with the evals when I first started it, I was able to wean and build my confidence probably the first 3 months. Once I finished those first 3 months, I had a game plan. I was like, okay, I've seen it before. This is a current plan of care that I have. This is the plan I have for this patient. And then also, I always like to be prepared. So if I see like I have an eval, try to spend time before my shift or like the day before to like really prep and really formulate a game plan when I see these patients. So I think preparation and repetition is the biggest thing to develop these plans.
For sure. Yeah, and Russ, it really does seem like mentorship is so important, like a part of the fabric or the culture, if you will, at OACM. So let's talk then about the support system for new grads.
So every clinician that joins the team as a new graduate, and really any clinician in general, but particularly our new graduates, you are linked with what we call a mentor. So you have one specific clinician who is kind of your voice of reason or your soundboard that you can bounce some ideas off of. When going through your first few months of working with the company, there's time blocked off on your schedule and your mentor schedule to where you can sit down and review the cases together, and they can lead you along the way and say, hey, I think you're getting lost in the weeds. I think you're overthinking this, or you might want to do a little bit more research. You might want to think about this, or based off of my clinical experience, here's what I think you should think about. And that will go on, we have it scheduled and structured to go for about 3 months or so, where you're doing it more regularly. But then after a little while, you start to grow and spread your wings, and it's not needed quite as frequently. But we do ensure that you're meeting with your mentor throughout the entirety of your first year.
Sure.
While you have that one specific clinician with you, it doesn't stop there. I know with Matt's introduction and onboarding, we blocked off time with every single clinician that we have in here so that you can kind of pick the brains and see the different treatment and manual styles of different therapists. So while he had me as his direct mentor, he also worked alongside with the other therapists as well.
Right. Yeah, and Matt, my daughter's only 18. She's going to college next year. She wants to be a PT, so I'm a little free advice for dad here. Tell us about navigating the job market and how you got to OACM.
I tell people all the time when you're searching for a job, no job is ever going to be perfect. So my personal rule is I made a checklist, and if it checks 80% of what I want for a job, then that's the right job for me. My biggest thing for looking for a job is different than most people. My number one is the culture for it. If you can find a group of like employees who you can get along with and you can be able to have fun but also be professional at the same time, that's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that was on my checklist is like how well the employers treat the employees. If I hear that a staff member, and this is for any job, if a staff member leaves after not even 3 months into the job and it's a frequent thing, then that's one of my biggest red flags because I know there's something up with that job. That job
Yeah.
doesn't have stability. When I first learned about this company and talking to Russ and other management about how they take pride in having their clinicians stick around for a long time, that was like a big green flag for me because as a person who is still new to the game, that's what I want is for someone to lean on and learn from for that. Obviously, pay is up there too,
Sure.
but it's not the end all be all. And this is what I've learned. If a company is offering you a sign on bonus, there is probably a reason why they want to hire you right away. And then once you learn about why they give you the sign on bonus and how management runs, you kind of think a lot about like why they do it. So I
Yeah.
tend to stay away from jobs that offer sign on bonuses. Another thing that I was looking for in a job, especially for the PT, is that if they're willing to empower you, meaning that they encourage you to be a better therapist, where they encourage you to take these continuing education classes, get these letters under your name, stuff like that.
Right.
OACM does a good job in encouraging people to, push themselves to become better therapists, have those letters under their name, be certified. So, it builds a bigger market value for yourself.
Right. Yeah, and Russ, let's talk about that, the letters under your name, continuing ed, professional development. Matt's pretty new to the game, but you've been at it a while. Talk about the importance of that, not just the letters, of course, but the actual education and professional development. The longer you're a PT and working with folks, the need for that.
You're never going to remember everything when you come out of school. And at some point, the curriculums for PT schools in the United States has become so vast that you touch base on a lot of different things, and there's no way to remember it all. So a lot of continuing education is kind of hitting the refresh button, but there's a large part of it too that really is more so set on refining your exercise prescription, your manual skills. If you're in the sports industry, I know the ACL is kind of the big hot topic. There's a lot of courses on that. So it's really quite important as you develop your skill set and navigate through your career and you find out what populations you want to work with or what skills you want to offer. That's what's going to kind of direct which continuing education courses to take. At OACM, I think something that we are lucky to have, as Matt was alluding to, was the clinicians that have been here for a while. So the reason that's important in this situation is as we see our younger staff come on board and develop, we can start to see, hey, I think you might want to think about taking a course on ACL recovery, or I think you might want to think about a course on manual skills.
Sure.
Everybody comes out of school better in some topics and need a little bit more skills in other topics. So with clinicians who are kind of able to oversee you, we can help guide you and let you know which course to take, because otherwise you're just kind of holding your breath and hoping that this is the right course to take. And
Right.
it's a lot of money to spend when you're not certain about what you're doing.
For sure. Yeah. Matt, let's talk a little bit more about the cultural fit, team integration, team dynamics, all of that, especially since you're, so new there. And it was probably, as you've outlined for us, priorities for you, a place where it just felt right, where you felt like you fit, all of that. So tell us more.
Yeah, I think personalities, I'm a pretty outgoing guy. So if I am able to like get along with a person like swimmingly, like we can able to have like conversations back and forth, poke a little fun at each other type of thing. That was like the biggest thing for me because, in this field, it can get a little serious, it can get a little heavy.
Mm,
But if we can, share a laugh or two with like the other staff members, I think it lightens up the burden, so to speak. And I will say this because of the personalities that we have here, and everybody's approachable and outgoing, and we care for each other every day. Even though I'm tired,
mm,
whether it's the night before doing documentation or being burned out from working with patients all day, I'm
sure.
always looking forward to coming to work every day because I know that the staff members will always put a smile on my face that like we can be able to still be professional but have a good time and have fun while
Right.
we're busy in the trenches work
Sh-
with patients.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Russ, maybe Matt's one of them, but I want to get a sense from you, like maybe have you share a success story or two, current team members. So like, how they went from grads to valued therapists and maybe your role in that, but just generally a sense of that transition and how that all works.
So under my management time on the last 5 years, I brought on 3 new graduate staff members,
Okay.
Matt being one of them, 2 of them at other locations. And what has been really great to see is day one, you can hear it in somebody's voice when they're talking to a patient. Again, it's daunting. People are asking you questions about their health. Am I ever going to get better? What's wrong? Is this something that needs fixed with surgery? So these are very heavy questions that can be difficult to answer. And what has been spectacular from my end is having that blocked time to be able to prepare these therapists, but rather kind of listening to them become a little more comfortable in their own shoes, and their responses are more thorough. They're more confident with their words that they're saying. So the 3 new graduate staff members that I've brought on personally and are still with the company, it's been incredible to see them grow. And that's from a PT where they're doing evaluations
Yeah.
to a PTA where they're primarily focused on the follow-up appointments
Sure.
and working in conjunction with the PTs. So that I think is probably part of the biggest success is just hearing these therapists and how confident they become. It's not only confidence in their words, but then watching their plans of care. Patients are now able to get out the door a few visits faster because they're now honing in on their craft.
Right. Matt, here at the end, I just want to get some advice from you for future graduates. I know you're sort of, like you say, new to the game, and a few years from now, we'll probably have you back on, and you'll be the old vet. But right now, like, advice for future grads, my daughter, other people's daughters and sons. What would be your best advice?
My biggest piece of advice is enjoy what you do. And this is for not just for a physical therapist standpoint, but for any young adult that is still trying to navigate through school and through the professional world, is like find something that you're very passionate about and go for it. And then everything will all fall into place once you put into work. It sounds very cliche, but that's like my biggest advice. Second piece of advice, this is specifically for the new grad therapist, is that never stop learning. I'm always continuing to keep learning. And then 10 years, 15 years, 20 years go by, I go back on this podcast, I'm still going to be learning. And
Right.
that's the biggest advice that I got from my clinicals, is that physical therapy is always evolving, it's always changing. And part of our responsibility is to be open-minded with the new things that are trending, whether it's dry needling or integrating AI into our documentation system. Other modalities that are popularizing right now is to be open-minded, be willing to learn, because a therapist told me this, that if you have stopped learning, then why are you still practicing,
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. It's like the human body doesn't seem to change, right? But our understanding of the body changes, and how to help people get back to whatever it is. Just get back to walking around the neighborhood or pickleball or whatever, right, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Russ, give you a last word, if you will, here at the end, just some closing thoughts and maybe some resources for future grads.
I think a very important resource for new graduates is to use the school you come from. I can tell you, as somebody who recruits and somebody who is always looking for a new therapist to join the team, I am forever and a day going to the career fairs at the universities. I am reaching out to the clinical instructors and reaching out to the administration team at the local universities to try to bring in a new therapist, right? So, I mean, it's a great resource. It may seem kind of archaic, and I'll go on LinkedIn or I'll go on Facebook and I'll see what I can find there. And absolutely, you can do that.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, Indeed, those are great places. We are on those platforms, but I think what's better is going to your university and using them as a resource, because I can tell you, for me, there are universities, we've gotten excellent therapists coming out of there. I'm going to go back to that source. I know the university puts out a good product, so that's what we're looking to join the team. So I would highly encourage that, encourage the job fairs, join the young professional groups where you live. I know here in Columbia, we have a pretty vast young professional group that I've reached out to a couple of times to see if there are any PT or PTs in the group that are interested. But if not, you can still get involved in other forms.
Yeah.
And I think one thing too, and this might be a word of advice for your daughter looking to get into it, the mentorship opportunities don't just start with new graduates or therapists that are in school getting ready to graduate.
Yeah.
It starts in high school and it starts in college. If you think this is something you're interested in, we have roles at OACM. Our technicians are typically college students who are kind of testing the waters to see if PT is right for them.
Yeah.
So, we offer mentorship there. We offer words of advice in the sense of, these are the schools and the programs you want to consider. Think about your debt to income ratio. So mentorship just doesn't come from a clinical perspective, but it also comes from a professional perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that one's ringing in my ears, the debt to income ratio, but that's maybe a different podcast or when we get done with this one. I just want to thank you both for being here today. I like this approach of speaking with a little bit more experienced, PT who does some of the recruiting, training, hiring, mentoring, all of that, and Matt who's, kind of recently through the door and benefiting from all of that. So good stuff today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to make a physical therapy appointment, call us directly at 443-478-4449. And for everything else, please visit us at mdbonedocs.com. Find out more about us online at mdbonedocs.com, and please remember to share and subscribe to this podcast. And that's all for today. I'm Scott Webb, and that was A Bone That's Fixed.